First website launches I ever seen were a Volvo store and a Chevy store last year, where the entire page structure, meta, everything except for the H1 tags was another dealer's. Copy paste.
Whoops.
Nice.
Yeah, and that takes a minute to fix from an SEO perspective.
Yeah, especially if it's sat out there for a few days.
Yeah, a couple weeks. The one in Ohio where it was copying Kentucky store completely. And then the Volvo store, there's 3 stores in this group, and one Volvo store at launch copied one of their other Volvo stores. And all the links, not just the meta structure and page structure, all the links were bad. Are you not going to bill us for a year? Thank you very much. And they were both DDC sites, and we were with the Midwest sales guy, Thomas something, who's been at DDC for years. We're doing this one. He says, "Well, I have to admit," because he was the sales rep over the one in the Midwest. He says, "This is the worst website launch I've ever seen. Sorry, guys, we're going to do some things about the bill." And I said, "Hold on, hold my beer. Open up this URL after the meeting." And he looked at it briefly during the meeting. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I got to do this one after, because that'll just be a total rabbit hole." The worst website launch I've ever seen. It's mind-boggling.
Well, on different
And
note,
of course, mea culpa.
Where are you sitting right now?
At a client in the Midwest, in the upper Midwest.
I see the interstate rolling behind you.
Yeah.
Is it a Hyundai store?
Stop it. Yes.
Well, I could see the. Sorry, I see the Hyundai logo on the sign back there.
Oh, all right. Let's. How's that? Is that better?
Okay, we got interstate behind you at a Hyundai store in the Midwest. We're never going to figure this out, but
we're not going there. Even I posted a photo 2 nights ago. Got here, and somebody in the industry is like, "Oh, you must be here." I'm like, "Really?" I didn't comment, didn't like it, didn't hide it. Could have hid it.
Well, 3 seconds, fellas. All right. Now, nobody can see anything behind you, Gary. It's just a white wall.
There you go. Hey, much more betters. Or my favorite, hashtag more better. Hashtag more better.
Mo better. Well, Gary,
hey
welcome
guys.
back.
Hey, Gary.
Good to be here.
It's been, just looking at the last time you were on, it's been 10 months.
Yeah, one nibble a year is about what you guys can tolerate of me. It's all good.
Yeah, we set it up that way.
But the real question is there enough fraud going around to be touching way more than once a year? And I would assume yes.
That's a good question.
Yes, it's ongoing. It's consistent. And also, right off the bat, I want to delineate, this is something we didn't really hit on as much last time. There is the inadvertent fraud. Set it up, let it, just run with it. It's not looked at again. And that's still heavily in, I'll say all forms of paid search, but definitely Google Ads, Bing Ads compared to even social. The social platforms are better at pushing like, hey, you need an update. But we're still seeing a lot of inadvertent fraud from setup. Dealer says, hey, I want this changed, and nobody actually makes the change. And then 2 months later, you're still looking at, why am I targeting there? Or why are the interest rates on my offer interest rates I can't offer today? The last time I had those was 75 days ago. How come they're still in my ads?
Wow.
So there's the inadvertent, and then there's the blatant or intentional fraud that we still see. And those segments are a little different. We still do seed and paid search heavily. And I'll make this single point. I've walked into over 2,000 dealers in just my consulting time since September '07. We've worked with about 1,000 dealerships over that time. We've not walked into one store yet that did not have a problem with a setup, campaign running, targeting locations, campaigns that shouldn't be on, should be on. And where the other segment that we see still today is dealers buying lists, although there's more of an awareness of audience creation, audience targeting, uploading CRM or DMS data to enable a better non-earned but paid media setup. But where we're also still seeing it heavily because of that list mentality, especially around conquest, is the email companies. Not where things are going in the first party data or CDP, because most folks that sell themselves as CDPs aren't CDPs yet. But that whole CDP first party data lake mentality. We're still, outside of that, we're still seeing a lot of direct intentional fraud in the list buying conquest email companies. Even direct mail still, even though we stay out of the traditional marketing swim lane heavily. They'll use our creative to do a campaign. We'll look at the reporting from that vendor with the client, and stuff just doesn't match. So population 75,000, and it said that they had, they influenced 80,000 people.
So we discovered something in Q4, not on in relation to clients or dealers at all. This was purely our own marketing. And we started to get all these phone calls on our sales line at Frickin' Tech for like lender stuff, like customers of dealerships or just people calling and like, hey, what's going on with my loan? What's going on? Like this kind of stuff. We're like, what the hell is going on? So come to find out, Google, and we use Google directly for our paid search campaigns, is just going in and arbitrarily adding terms and they're spending our dollars on terms that we don't want. Yep.
What kind of terms?
Right, so
like car dealer loans,
keywords.
Like generate leads, just whatever they might find in our website. Just
So, and I don't think enough people know. So, and especially since NADA was last week and all the marketing and the buildup, but generally the vendor drumbeat. In order for you to get a badge from Google, like Google Platinum, Google Titanium, Google Unobtainium, because we run a handful of dealers for their paid search, the way you get a badge is if you do what Google says to do. And as Performance Max or PMax has grown and some of the other testing that they're doing, and paid search companies, marketing companies are basically adhering to turning on auto settings, auto applies, things like that. Because quite frankly, I mean, I don't own a tech stack in it. Like you said, you're managing it directly on Google. We manually do that stuff as well. For the last 10 years, we've been auditing and improving it, holding the vendors accountable. But about 7 years ago, we got into the space, and we literally have 11 or 12 dealers that we run paid search for, and then we have another 40, 50 that we are co-managing it with the vendor. And so a lot of people don't know, in order for you to get these advertising badges, like your Google whatever, you have to follow their rules. And where we've seen the biggest drops in performance are when basically a dealer by proxy, the marketing company just goes, here's a bucket of dollars, even if it's managed right from a spend and which campaigns are doing shared budget, not. The more the progression, and eventually Google will take over a fully automated system, whether it's AI capable, and then there's manual input. There's everything but a clear word track that basically this is going to be completely computer operated, completely computer optimized. But basically, PMAX is spend X amount of the budget with them, and you get a stamp of approval. And we get in our performance reviews with our Google Ads reps on our monthly. Sometimes, because we push it, we have twice a month reviews, especially if we're doing a new client on board or we're doing some significant changes beyond A/B testing. And the bottom line is the reason that kind of stuff that you talked about, Alex, is happening is because all the auto apply, ROAS, CPAs, you're feeding Google with what a conversion dollar amount is or what an event dollar amount is. And the more you feed the Google engine with that and turn on automation, like automatically add keywords, automatically remove keywords, automatically remove non-serving keywords, which on the surface, all these things would make sense. It sounds like a really good idea. But every time we have directly or indirectly gone down the automated route or turned more of that budget over to Google to figure out how to spend it, performance and how do we judge performance? Leads, cost per lead, impression share loss, budget optimization. Impressions don't matter. Clicks don't matter. You need the device in the dealership, or you need somebody to fill out a form, a chat, a text, somehow enabling contact. And even though fundamentally they matter, I don't want people to truly misunderstand me. The way the engine works is the old school CPM. Clicks don't buy cars, people do. Quit having engines, especially if you're not, and this is the dealer Achilles heel, you're not measuring because you're on that vendor's dashboard. And let's just say you really do have read-only or some kind of access into Google Ads. Do you know how to benchmark those? What are the KPIs? And month over month, do you look at improvements or do you just take the vendor's word for it? But simply put, fully automatically adjusted Google Ads by the engine doesn't work.
I believe
I buy that all the way because they start targeting the wrong things for you.
100%. We've never seen an ad account that did not drop
But it
net
converts.
performance.
That's the thing. So if you're the computer and you're saying, oh, I got people dialing this phone number, or I see, clicks to this form, the computer's going to think it's doing the right thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially since GA4 is still buggy as hell. And when you properly have GA4 and Google Ads, MCC connected, which there are still thousands of dealers out there that have their vendors without a connected account. I don't know how that can really happen, but they have a GA4 account or the vendor does. They don't have the one that's connected or there is not a connected account. You can't see it. We're still seeing Google Ads coming in as unassigned, not even paid search in GA4, unassigned, because vendors are not correctly running the actual accounts, let alone campaigns, ad groups, keywords. They're not even running the account properly. And dealers are saying, oh, I heard from a 20 group, buddy, that they're killing it with this vendor. They're OEM okayed, or they're not, but they perform real well. And they just fall in. And, where does the fraud really come into play? When it's intentionally mis-set up, misaligned, or misreported. We're still seeing accounts. We'll look at a vendor managing a dealer's $15,000 a month Google Ads account. And we look at the location setup with the vendor. And you see the targets near the dealership and whatever their conquest or direct strategy is. And then you see the rest of the US open up for ads. There's no red, there's no excluded areas. Ads are firing in Canada, ads are firing in Spain. People are like, well, we set it up with these locations. Folks, that doesn't mean Google's not running ads everywhere else to get clicks. And they spend your budget that way. One of the best examples of that, we onboarded with a dealer group 3.5 years ago. They're no longer a client. And one of their staff was brilliant. He was able to code, run these scripts, and actually real-time look at what Google Ads were running. Like literally, because Google never shows you this ad's running right now. If you use the ad diagnosis and preview tool, you can at least say, yes, your ad is running or not. But Google never gives you a report like this is what ran for these keywords on this day with this exact ad variant. And this guy literally built a script to run and crawl and show the ads that were running. And this was our assessment meeting, the initial one that a dealer does before they can even sign up with us. Turn my laptop around after he had his heyday, and this stuff was cool shit. Turn my laptop around and said, you're running 30% of your budget 4-hour drive away from you. 30% of your clicks are running from 280 to 350 miles away from you. Jaw drops. You're so brilliant, stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. And this is a viable vendor that was running their paid search, one we've referred in the past. And it was, you got to clean this up, or we probably have to have a discussion with the dealer group. So again, there's smart people out there, but sometimes you completely miss it when you're just looking at one level of data.
I mean, it's between all the different advertising platforms that are out there, like take Facebook, for example. And Jeff and I were just in this yesterday. We were trying to get a pixel reassigned. And that task alone has taken like 3 weeks because half the time you do it, it errors out.
It doesn't work.
And it's how many clicks deep buried into, you got a meta, like business manager, then you've got an advertising manager, and there's a business manager inside the advertising manager. And then there's your data sets, but then getting notified that it's actually taken. There's 3 different notifications areas. And it's like, how the hell do you keep up with all this crap between Google and Facebook alone? Those 2 are the worst. It just
gotcha. Yeah.
It's a full-time job, just keeping up with it all.
Yeah.
And just like GA4 is still buggy as heck, let alone if you're being thresholded and you're not getting enough of your data. But the tech stacks, these ad tech stacks, whether it's a pervasive company like Google or Meta, or it's one of the tech stacks within automotive, the struggle is there's not one single data repository that is error-free. The way it's tracked, the way it's deployed, the way it's measured. There's not one accurate set of data out there. And, my first experience with this was just looking at the old UA or GA3 or whatever you want to call it, analytics over 10 years ago. Really had to get into the weeds with the dealer group, A/B testing. And we were intentionally running live searches. And this is where they were starting to deploy their real time, which is also a feature of GA4 now. So in the last 30 minutes, how many people were on your site? Where were their cities and locations? Which pages were they on? And we couldn't track any of our visits, whether they're incognito, not incognito, real time live, clicking through a page, staying on 2 pages and then going back, clicking on another page, going back to our discussion. And you couldn't see about 30% of the time data accuracy. And so the problem with evaluating where should you market, away from the fraud point for a moment, where should you spend your dollars and what's working? There's not one source of truth. And that's really unfortunate because you've got all these, again, vendors that are rubber stamped. They pay into these programs or profit share in these programs, pay a fee, which is also making customer service absolutely an abomination. And yet they can't say our data is accurate. And even some of the most trusted partners we have from marketing, website platforms, et cetera, they have problems since GA4 went live, as a single example, with the fact that their vendors reporting this data have server problems, have reporting problems. I mean, just since GA4 went officially live, 7-8 months ago, we have most of our clients missing gobs of data, let alone vendors incorrectly setting up campaigns, some of them using the old UA methodology. I mean, Google Analytics 4's defaults are organic search, paid search, display, referral, direct, email,
YouTube.
and you still have you still have vendors setting up source medium old UA structures that aren't reporting into default. Now, anybody can go into the default, click it, and go to source medium in 3.5 seconds. Well, why should you have to do that? And why is the vendor not reporting correctly to the now up-to-date but error-full reporting platform? And this is something that's truly pervasive around the industry across multiple vendors. We're seeing a lot of missing data as well as intentionally missing data. We still see vendors in the last year because of inventory issues, which we don't have as much today, but 6, 8, 10 months ago, 12 months ago. In 2023, we were still seeing new vehicle campaigns being put into geo or to dealer to prop up the performance because they don't know how to properly write new vehicle ads or they don't correctly set up a dynamic campaign. And meanwhile, you're looking at the entire account or major campaigns that should easily operate all day long, like dealer, dealership, dealer near me, dealer in town, because they have the new vehicle campaigns or used vehicle campaigns camped inside there. They can't perform right, so you drag down the entire campaign or the entire account. And the other struggle, since this has been a thing now for a couple of years, even the ASC standard. You have to tell your vendor, only activate ASC events inside my GA4. And we'll see that in a GA4 account for the website, but we'll get on the marketing vendor call. We know that the dealer had 200 form conversions and 200 phone call conversions, but get on the meeting and conversions are 2,725 because they're counting hours and directions as a conversion. They're counting a VDP view or a certain activity within a VDP as a conversion. And one, you're messing up your analytics, but two, if it's correctly connected, you're messing up your Google Ads because Google Ads is trying to optimize around the wrong data points. And so you inherently have maybe misdirected fraud because you can't measure right. So there's
you've
been
got different vendors who have different conversion points. So you might have the website, a lead form submission and a phone call. Definitely that's a great conversion point. But if you're, I don't know, maybe the marketing agency, a conversion point for you is getting a click to the website. So how do you align all the vendors in the entire industry to come together on what is a conversion, and then have their clients, aka the dealers, also be okay with it and say, well, I know that you don't provide any leads, you're just bringing in customers from this area over here to get to my website, and I'm totally cool with that. I don't, I'm still happy paying you $3,000 a month, but when I go into my CRM reporting later and see that you didn't come up at all for any sales that we made because you don't provide leads, now I'm going to hold you accountable. Right.
So to directly answer the question, it's disjointed. And even in the good and vain attempts that the ASC group is doing, the Automotive Standards Council.
Did you say vain?
Vain. Attempts that are going on, there is not a standard. I still have discussions veiled as arguments with dealers and dealer groups sometimes because they want to see certain data. And quite frankly, you can set those up as events or have some custom reports, but don't report non-conversions as conversions because it will affect performance overall, net performance. What do you get for your dollar? And at a certain point, I stopped arguing or discussing that. Not our clients. Our clients buy into what we say is a conversion, what should be an actual hard conversion. But the bottom line is, and we've seen this ancillary effect across everything, but the indirect answer is we can't have a single data point yet and agree on them because you still have a lot of technology constraints. Some chat platforms cannot report properly for whatever reason to the data layer in GA4. Most of the phone tracking companies have not made any real efforts to report to GA4. I think there's only one that has completely followed step by step, rote to rote, has complied with the GA4 standards within the Automotive Standards Council. And whether or not that, let's just say for a moment, tongue in cheek, sorry, Brian, it's not the end all. And he's even said that himself. But the bottom line is that it still comes down to every vendor wanting to report off their own dashboard or their own numbers. So there's no normalization. The data is not even there in the first place. There are platforms that have attempted in the last 10 years to report all this data across sources and lead generation with the mindset of looking at what does it cost you to get in a customer in the door. But we're not there. I don't think as long as we're involved in automotive, the three of us and people watching and the people we love in the industry, I don't think this generation's going to see anything, especially with the outside marketing, just what the OEMs are doing, especially around data and vendors, these enterprise plays that are happening at the OEM level. And they're all happening because dealers do not exercise and execute well on data. They just don't. And part of it's because it's blind still from the vendors, like we're talking about. But the reason, for example, that the OEMs are getting toward finalizing their plans for first-party data and housing all that data on their side is because it does not execute well on the dealer level. Even some of the larger groups cannot execute at a level that is meaningful and can get to what the vendors talk about, one-to-one marketing. We know what they've looked at. We know how many times they've been to the site. We can even see their other shopping data. Completely wrong car in the last email. Completely wrong car.
Right.
And that exists. So our conundrum, the place we're at, is not just because we can't agree on conversions. What is a conversion? Are we even looking at the right data in the first place? Even if we can agree to disagree on what is a conversion, what's an event, is it worth tracking that? Should we put more data into how we adjust our marketing? I'm open to anybody who has an intelligent conversation about it. The bottom line is our data is wrong from step one. So what do we do with that?
I mean, it's all an interpretation. Even like I think of just the databases vendors have, and I'm sure Google is no exception. You build things in an original time period. So I'll take Frickin' Tech, for example. We were going to build a full database utilizing the Hadoop technologies 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, actually. And Hadoop was a great way to take little elements of data, say a first name, and create a relationship with a last name kind of thing. But you could also create a relationship with a vehicle and a dealership. And what it would allow us to do, if implemented the way we had hoped, was to have a universal database that was nationwide. And we could draw the circle wherever we wanted to. We could say, okay, here's America, here's Canada, for example. They're separate databases. So we would be able to say, okay, here's all Toyota stores and how they do. But as we started to roll this out, it turned out that other vendors we were working with, their data structures were more like a SQL system. And it was like think of like a spreadsheet where you can only look at one part of the spreadsheet. So if on this spreadsheet you had first name, last name, customer address, but no vehicle information, it was very hard to tie that back to a vehicle. Fortunately, it forced us to adopt more of a SQL kind of database system. and we weren't able to go out with our grand design of utilizing Hadoop in a certain way. And so we were tied down to other vendors because a lot of these other vendors, and I'm specifically thinking of DMS systems, were written decades ago, and they're stuck with that kind of data structuring from decades ago, and it's very hard to update the systems and bring it into a future perspective, or give it a future perspective even. And so you've got all these different inconsistencies around and limitations just from trying to do things, being open within the industry and whatnot. And, it kind of bites you a little bit, unfortunately.
And
And so that's to your point of why is the data is not exactly wrong. I mean, it's almost like drawing a metaphor to our media, like the mainstream media has a tendency to omit things instead of giving you the whole picture, and it's a little bit of that sort of thing. If I can bring us to layman terms,
it's not news when it's a panel or opinion. Report what is. And it's the same thing. It's the disease we have marketing in the automotive industry is if the core, if the lowest level of data is correct, there's still somebody who's going to execute with an intent or an indirect intent to get to an end, means to an end, that may not be able to properly utilize that data or intentionally omitting that data. And that's the promise of the CDPs. We can identify that customer. We can see what's in their garage. We're going to execute real time and do one-to-one marketing. And the bottom line is, to date, and we saw some very good vendors in Vegas, and we're going to be taking them through demos and hopefully onboarding a dealer so we can test. But to date, we've not seen a near flawless, let alone flawless, execution of first-party data. And most of the time, it's bad data in, bad data out, but it mostly comes from the execution of it. And to the point you made, Alex, integrations, or the way to execute on data is integration. And even people talk about integrations that don't have push-pull. They might have a pull mentality. They may be getting the data from the dealer in order to execute on it, but there's no push-pull data. They're not appending that data and normalizing that data. We still have an issue. One of our meetings at NADA was Data One. There's still not even a VIN explosion standard to represent vehicles for marketing. There's not even a data standard in the industry yet. And so, Jake,
you can have
Jason,
a Data One ID or a Chrome ID.
Right, but it doesn't want to go.
But to your point, there isn't a standard. Yes.
There's not a standard, and there's still incorrect or mislabeled information even before it actually sees a human eyeball. Does it have integrated technology, or is it Apple CarPlay or Android Auto? Just the way that the data is represented, and inconsistencies there. And again, this is part of the issue with the auto industry getting better. And on top of that, all of the promises about transparency and customer experience. If you don't own and execute first player on that data, you can't say that you're being entirely transparent because your inventory syndication didn't quite represent the vehicle right. And I don't mean transparency like intentionally being or misrepresenting or to the point of fraud, lying about the vehicle. I'm not saying that, but even in the data syndication and normalization, there's 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 ways of talking about one piece of tech that's in the car. And how can that be correct across all syndicated parties? And you take it a step further, you've got thousands of dealers not only misunderstanding or not even understanding where that data comes from, when they're working with their pricing tools and their syndication tools. I don't care if it's vAuto or VinQ or HomeNet or, dealer specialties, whatever it is, your photography to your inventory ingest to your imagery appending to syndication. I've been around those vendors for over 20 years. This is my 24th year in the industry, being vendor side since 02, 03. And we still, and this is, by the way, is the 30th year of the internet. AutoBytel was 1994. Edmunds, KBB, Auto Trader was 95 and 96. We're 30 years old.
Point. That was the big one.
We're 30 years old and we still don't know how to show a car correctly across, 10 marketplace sites.
It's crazy.
I mean, and we're still the only large vertical in North America that ingests customer information in flat files, ADF data. And you wonder why we can't append rich data, to that and execute on that. That's why dealers need third parties and second parties to execute, like CDPs and this whole data conversation. The drinking game at NADA last week was take a shot every time you hear CDP, AI, or FTC, because everything rolling out in June. You could make it from one end of the hall to the other, just shit-faced, face down somewhere halfway down the hall. And which ones are full AI, which are not? What's ChatGPT 1, 2, 3, 4? And nobody has a direct answer.
I've heard something before we got on this show. This is totally off topic, but maybe this is the definition of AI now. So the more sophisticated implementations of ChatGPT have figured out, and they encountered an issue where they were running a script and they were trying to break through into websites and sign up for things and whatnot. And it couldn't get past the CAPTCHA form. So the AI system on its own, not under any human programming, figured out that it could use something like Fiverr and hire a human to fill out the CAPTCHA and then go in and run itself through the website. Yes.
Wow. Yikes.
That's scary.
Well, we're still waiting to figure out what this whole New York Times Microsoft OpenAI lawsuit is, because of grabbing data behind a firewall or a paywall, non-public information, and having that and syndicating that. There's a massive lawsuit. Who knows how many years it'll take to get through. But that said, there's not a straight definition yet from the vendor side, let alone what's happening actually from the tech side. Because AI does one thing in machine learning and ChatGPT does something macroly different. One's an engine to find and create things. One's an engine just to communicate, basically. You give it prompts, it works. AI is a completely different beast. And again, even from a basic fundamental understanding, lack of understanding level, there's people that are assuming they're intertwinable, not interusable, but intertwinable and misrepresenting one tech feature for another tech feature. And it's frustrating. We sat in meeting after meeting, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with the floor open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And again, hearing these tech acronyms and saying, well, can you define which element or elements you're using, which level of them they're using, and what you're enabling and what you're going to do next step? And it's, well, that's really the dev team and they're not here, or it's a black box and we can't really tell you. But at the end of the day, this is the way we explain it to dealers. And not to say that a tech stack you leverage in a dealership, it does not have enablement from AI or ChatGPT or something like that. From the AI sense of the example I've been giving, and it's not a direct correlation, but it does cause dealers to stop and think. Like, your AI enabled whatever it is, you're either your marketing tech stack or your CRM, which is much more of a daily day-to-day leverage use. Like, okay, how much do you pay for that for, let's say it's a large store, let's say 50 users, right? What's your bill? It might be $8,000, $10,000 a month. and you think that's complete AI. Now go down the street to a hospital with 200 beds and ask them what their IBM Watson bill is per month. It's 6 or 7 figures. And you think you're on this same tech, fully enabled, because everything is drilled down to 1 or 2 acronyms or 3 acronyms. And you think you have the same beast that a doctor to doctor is using with the AI looking at a diagnosis and seeing if it can build accuracy compared to what your CRM or your marketing automation platform is for 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 grand a month. And that it's constantly learning, because AI and machine learning are meant to have a constant learning and find those reference points and get those things validated. It's not the same beast.
I got a very, very, very deep and good look at one of the bigger AI providers in our industry, and I can't disclose anything, but I can tell you it's nothing but if-then statements.
Oh, really?
Hey, logic, chatbots, and really good subroutines if-then rules.
You know, the
And that's
AI
not AI,
component
folks.
itself is really just the language modifiers.
Yes. Yeah. Again, there are pieces of AI enabled throughout. Again, we've been hearing it for the last, let's say, half a dozen years, although it's been more pervasive since 2020 and COVID. But the phone systems, the CRM systems, the marketing automation systems. And the bottom line is this: there's a component or a piece, because if you have the full brain of AI, you're not stroking a check for $6,000 a month to get it. Sorry, not sorry. So there's a lot of enablement, but most tech that we see in automotive really comes down to logic and really good bots, basically. So anyway, it's enabling more of the discussion around what happens or doesn't happen. It was funny. Veronica was interviewed by Brooke for Facts Not Feelings, and they got into a little bit of the AI discussion the other day. And what's interesting is Veronica used used ChatGPT for one of her article submissions in the last year and played with it. And she still wrote it and edited it, but she needed some ideas, and that's what ChatGPT is really good for. And I've played around with it. No, we are never replacing one of our headcount at IMAX with software. We will continue to have automotive writers. And I actually cringe. I almost throw up every time I open, get a news alert on my phone. I open it up, and the beginning of the article or the footer says, this article was written by AI or was assisted by ChatGPT. It's like, your writers can't even write anymore. And Veronica, in her interview with Brooke on Saturday or Sunday, I think it was Saturday in Vegas, literally said it looked like my grandson wrote it. I mean, that's what dealers are doing. It's like,
Sports
all right,
Illustrated,
we're attempting. Yeah, thank goodness they got out, let alone whether they survive or not, because their investment company has said Sports Illustrated's future is seriously in jeopardy. The bottom line is this: we're attempting to sell $100,000 schmagoo, and you're going to have a computer do that. You're going to have software do that. No human touch. I mean, because the logic can answer questions. What's the horsepower? What's the towing capability? Chris Leslie's comment. I like that one. That's really cool. How can you tell the same story to your kid 15 different ways? Use ChatGPT. It will do that. That's really cool enablement.
It's great if you need to vary content for SEO that you're trying to scale across a couple thousand websites.
Yeah, but here's the scary part about it. Even if you get out of duplicate land, what I've seen written by tech versus tech and edited by human, or even better, enhanced by tech and still edited, then posted by human, there is a gaping hole in efficiency. We've seen dealers enabled by AI and ChatGPT, and we've seen the impact of their SEO hit the wrong way. We've seen new pages authored that usually are getting organic traffic within 90 days, 120 days, not getting any traffic. And we've seen the bad
Really?
side, not just, oh, we got ChatGPT or AI to lie. It really comes down to, if you're going to remove humans who know how to communicate about a product, who are decent at communicating with another human, and can go to the point of closing an appointment or a sale or something along those lines, the more tech enablement we see, at least for the near term, I see those results going the wrong way. And the more automation, even at the automation level that we've seen from these marketing tech stacks, really yield lower and lower and lower ROI. Even staying away from the item you brought up, where basically you're just relying on Google to run everything like a PMAX setup, where it's creating offers or keywords or ads that are not accurate. I mean, let's just face it, the most fundamental part of digital advertising, SEM. You're buying keywords, you're creating ads, or your vendor is, and firing them off. Used car clicks are not supposed to be paid by the OEMs. As a matter of fact, some don't even pay certified. But you're not getting your used campaigns. And if you have automation turned on in Google Ads, you will get used car keywords firing in your new campaigns. We see it every time we open the keyword recommendations. We don't have any auto applies on for any client, and ask our vendors that are managing it for dealers not to do that. And you see 20-30% of those keywords that they're recommending every month are used keywords. If you have auto apply turned on, or Google's running your ad campaigns for you with automation, know that you're going to have to manually pull all that crap out, because OEM is not going to pay for it. And then they're going to start auditing your other advertising. So where it doubles back into the fraud component, quite frankly, in there is the vendor saying, oh no, we're doing this, we're updating. You're on a performance call and you call it out. Hey, this needs to be fixed. And then 2 weeks later, you're still looking at it, or something you told them to turn on is not on. And in the pain points on the vendor side, most of them, the larger enterprise vendors, there's been such a headcount cut in 2023. My reference earlier to support is really struggling. I mean, the headcount at the larger vendors has really been cut and impacted. And you have fewer people managing more accounts, and those end up in dead zones. And you end up with big misses, both intentionally and unintentionally in there. And the fraud tends to perpetuate at that point. For example, we ask clients, marketing companies, to set up dynamic is the way to go to inventory. You can't write that many ads. You let Google write dynamic for new and used inventory. But if you don't have static set up to always be there, you're short selling yourself. You're short selling your opportunities to get relevant clicks and conversions. And there's some vendors that we have asked for 4 months, 5 months, to the point that the dealer will call up and say, if you don't do this again, and I'm on one more call with Gary and his team, you're done. And the pushback on doing anything manually, because of profit margins and things like that, the pushback is massive. And at the end of the day, if you're a dealer, if you're a marketing person, if you're an operator, you've got to push your vendors to do this, to connect all the sources, make sure they're up to date in the reporting. The UTM tracking is set up for GA4. And even then, campaign setup, the right source medium, the right campaign names, etc. There's vendors in the space. Clients that we have got, 2 of our clients got into a heavy up with a video platform. So that's going to probably reveal to whoever watches this now or later, with a video company that got sold a few years ago to a large customer satisfaction company on the West Coast. And they did this heavy up for the OEM, and all the dealers got pushed into it. And this is the 3rd year in a row where the Facebook and YouTube ads are not properly structured for UTM tracking. Third year in a row after I called it out 4 years ago and got kind of blacklisted by that vendor.
You have a habit of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's 80 to 90% of the dealers aren't going to measure it. They're just going to take the vendor's reporting and go, okay, I believe it. Or maybe audit their CRM, but they're not going to look at their marketing or smart enough to look at the marketing because they don't have an independent third party evaluating it. Ooh, sales pitch. And there's no way they can go back. And yet the vendor is telling the OE, oh my gosh, look at this job we did for you. We brought your brand and model purchase intention up by 70%, 60%, 50%. And the other data point that we're staring at the industry, and a matter of fact, this will be outside of NAD, this will be the second time I talk about it publicly. So I'm going to put it out here, drum roll. One of the ways that the OEMs and vendors evaluate what's happening with traffic is unique shopper counts. That's one of the metrics that are looked at heavily. Even some of the large website vendors use that. Hey, shopper counts are up, shopper counts are down. And with this environment we now live in, with disparate marketing, we've got OTT, we've got display, and sometimes the display networks aren't within the control of the large advertising platforms, but they're putting their ads out. And they say they vet the platforms. I don't think so. But yet, it's interesting. If you listen to the OEs and a lot of the large platforms, in Q3 and Q4, you've heard, I'll average it out, about 20% drop in unique shopper counts. Now, typically, new shopper counts attribute to a lead sometimes as early as the first 30 days. This is not a single dealership view. We can talk about that data. This is agnostic. So unique shopper counts, even the marketplaces, even the cars, the trader, the gurus, etc., looking at all their traffic and the traffic issues, the conundrums, advertising revenue. You look across it, there's been an average that I've heard between Q3 and Q4 that unique shopper counts are somewhere around 20+% down. And if you look at Google Trends, you might be convinced of that. Even if we remove fleet from the sales figures, because unfortunately the sales figures that the OEMs publish have retail and fleet sales in those numbers, auto sales did not drop anywhere close to 20% at the end of last year. Where are we missing the unique shopper counts? I would submit that the disparate media play, OTT, some of these display networks, some of where the fraudulent ads and clicks are going to, let alone the validation clicks from India, China, Europe that these farms just hit. You know, if you're a GM dealer and you have Martin Retail Group, you're getting validation clicks as much. We've seen dealers in smaller areas as much as 20% of their display and paid search ads are getting clicked from Southeast Asia. And that's the formula that they ran up to do those LMAs for General Motors, but it's bullshit traffic. And it's not fraud for the sake of fraud, but and GA4 is not set up like UA. You just don't blanketly set up. I mean, you can apply an IP exclusion, but you can't operate GA4 fundamentally for the sake of marketing measurement the same way you did in UA. As a matter of fact, in UA, you could just turn on known Google bots and just turn that filter on and get those visits not counted, those hits and sessions not counted.
There's two ways it's happening. Just so you know, it's nearly impossible to get away from them. And we've had this problem with dealer refresh spam. I've had this problem at Frickin' Tech and hiring, where we say we're, United States only is all we're hiring. These people in other countries are using VPNs, and they're coming right in nonstop. It's annoying as hell.
And even if it's not, when inventory constraints in the last couple of years got huge because of export down to the Caribbean, where I was just there for my birthday a couple of weeks ago, and getting to meet in the last handful of years, Puerto Rico dealers, Virgin Islands, stuff like that. The way that they hunt for cars down there and then transport them, if you know that whole story of how used cars get down to the Atlantic, basically to the Caribbean, they have humans and non-humans scouring And I did spy. I'm going to interrupt myself real quick. I did see Jeff's response there. I'm not calling OTT out as a problem. What I'm saying is that's not getting all the measurement in a way that the OEMs and the large measurers of traffic into the industry are missing it. That's my point. So if we have this argument that shopper counts are down, one of our clients, their OEM got in their grill because their unique shoppers were down 4 or 5 months in a row by 40%. It's data transparency and the fact that we get in the habit in the industry, especially those of us who kind of speak for the industry and talk with vendors and talk with the whole sphere. We just don't work with dealers. Third parties hire us. The marketplaces hire us. We're consulting for a vast array of vendors. Our point of measurement is getting so inaccurate, we can't talk about the normal data points, just like 10 years ago, bounce rate in 20 groups. Sorry, it's not a discussion point. It is relevant to A/B testing. Did you make a change on your website? Bounce as a single talking point has been irrelevant as long as it's been talked about. It's a good measurement if you keep it in context. But my point being more, Jeff, and the audience around measurement, I'm not calling out OTT, which some of our dealers use, or even retargeting and display that way. It's just becoming so disparate that you can't have a single talking point again. Because if you look at brand intention, Amazon as an example, even though only Hyundai is partnered with them, Amazon has a shopping tool for every OEM within Amazon. Every single year, make, model car is in Amazon. And you can look at every 2024 model in Amazon as an Amazon user. Are all those clicks that aren't on a dealer website, that are not on the OEM website, even if they report sample or full data back to the OEM and the third-party aggregators? My point being is this: we have to talk with the large data providers. The first person I brought this up with, because he talks a lot about shopper counts and lead generations, Jason Rice and LotPop. And I brought this up to John Anderson and Jason Rice last month and the month before, John first in December. And then I was visiting with LotPop in January in KC. And the bottom line is this: we should stop talking about what changes and deltas we have in the industry and what outcomes we should be looking at if the data can no longer be looked at in a single silo. We're chasing the wrong metrics. And the media now in automotive is so varied because of all these advertising sources that I think we're looking at the wrong data from point A. We can't even get to point B unless we can start pulling in all these disparate eyeballs, all this CPM type traffic that's not a direct click from an ad or earned media, an email blast, or things like that. And by the way, dealers and vendors need to have DMARC set up as of February 1st, so your emails aren't automatically going into spam in Google, Hotmail, and Yahoo, or two of those platforms. If your DMARC's not set up, your emails are dead. There are still dealers out there who are operating their email servers without HTTPS. How in the heck is that happening? But it is 2024. Don't take bullshit reporting from your vendors. Validate it. What cities are they coming from? Is it in your targeting? Are the campaigns reporting? Is your email and your website set up right? Is it representing you? Have you not refreshed your homepage on your website for a year, 2 years, 3 years? Are you set up for the new FTC guidelines that are rolling out very soon? There's going to be some big lawsuits that come out of that one. Are you in compliance for PII? There are still dealers emailing databases to vendors out there in non-secure email. Someone's going to foobar that up.
Well,
nicely.
How many CRM companies have come out and said this is the way we're going to accept lead data from here on out?
Mm-hmm.
Haven't heard that one.
You've got to have your ducks, right? You've got to have your ducks in a row. I did a blog the other day coming out of NADA, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, that basically said, aside from the buzz talking points, are you really set up to succeed in 24? Most dealers do not know where their marketing is running. They know their vendor, they know where the check or the credit card goes to, but they don't know how things are being done. And not for lack of transparency. Yes, there are vendors who do it purely for lack of transparency, but mostly because they don't understand and they're not holding the vendors accountable. And yes, there's a lot of really iffy and jicky stuff that's being done out there. All I can say is know what you're doing, measure it, and have your accountability. I'll bring up the same thing I brought up last year. If your calls for paid search and paid social start with the same thing, this was your impressions. Like, you can see the data on the screen, but the jockey running the deck is reading off the deck. Impressions, clicks, cost per click, cost per lead. No. 30 days ago, you told us to concentrate on Tahoes and Suburbans because I had 45 on the ground. Here's how we did. That's the way marketing's supposed to run. You gave us an initiative, aged inventory, our used holdings, get these on there. We're holding this new inventory. That's how your monthly performance reviews should be going. And if your vendor doesn't do that, put them on notice. And if they still can't do it, replace them.
Yeah. Call them out. And your vendor should be happy to hear your gripes.
Just call Gary and let him do it.
Well, if you don't want to use any honey, let Gary do it.
Right. If you want to go straight for the jugular, that's what myself, Jake, Jason, and Jim do. And love the fact that we've grown our team and all the vendors that met with us and dealers that met with us at NADA, because this year and next year are pivotal in automotive with what the OEMs are taking over, or they're taking it over with a third-party platform. And you know who they are. I mean, you've seen the tie-ups, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but for example, you look at GM or Hyundai with Tekion. They're going to be running the full tech stack from the OEM site down to the dealer site. You have to figure out a way to partner with them or do like it was 10, 15 years ago, run an ancillary everything. You have your own website, your own tech stack, your own separate CRM, because all that stuff still filters back to these players, folks. And this is the direction we're heading. There are pervasive players who are taking over the data play and eventually the marketing play. And even 20 years ago, Lexus knew their new buyers better because Lexus was the one that sent out the tennis racket to the LS customer or the golf clubs or the tickets for the concert, not the dealer. Even the best dealers did not do this consistently. The OEM took that over, especially in the luxury lines. Lexus was the first one that did that. Dealers have never been able to pivot and act on that data ever. Yes, we're getting better at it, but dang, the OEMs are taking it over. Half the OEMs are this close to having their whole CDP strategy done. Nailed, SOWs, SLAs, the whole 9 yards. Dealers are going to be giving up the control of that in the next couple of years. Market better.
I see that. Communicate
with your customers better. Own your database better, especially if you're relying on an equity mining company or a CDP company who says, you know, we know what your customer's looking at right now. We can send them the right message. Look at some of those messages. We had to audit one of our clients a couple of days ago, clicked on the links that were going out in the marketing, and they were all broken links.
Wow.
With a reliable vendor. You couldn't get there. 404 or complete fail, just spun. So
Beautiful.
Inspect, audit, hold accountable. If you want an audit, reach out to us, info@imexweb.com and just get an assessment meeting. There's nothing on the hook. We don't have contracts anyway. But if you can't get audited, and no, we don't do one of those NADA hooks that a lot of consultants do in the industry, marketing companies. The way that we do the deep dive, no, we don't do freebies. We can talk about deals, but no, we don't do freebies. But the playbook you'll get, which nobody else in the industry does, is invaluable. It'll be way beyond the money that's spent. So
Cool.
Good note to end it on.
Yes. Thank you, Gary.
Gary, always a
Thank you,
pleasure, man. Straight through. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. Thank you for everybody watching. Send the questions in, and I'll read them after. Thank you for participating, guys. Maybe it won't be 10 months next time.
We'll have you on sooner.
Yeah.
All right, Gary.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Enjoy your weekend.